So I came up and decided to get a job on the second shift. Went to work for a guy by the name of Bill Richardson. He's known as Big Bill, and some of you in here, I'm sure know him and remember him. Bill weighed about over 400 pounds, so hence the name Big Bill. But I realized right quick that it was a good place to work. Even then, when it was just, Lucks, there was an enthusiasm in people's demeanor and their work efforts.
My name is Lisa Smith, and I worked here, it's been 21 years, and I was here for 11 years. I was the IT manager for this plant, and I had responsibilities in other plants. Also tested out a personal computer, which was the size of a suitcase at one time for me to have, so that if I was unable to get into the office, I could have a telephone line that I could use that personal computer and dial into the system to do some work. Mid-range systems, the last system we had was an AS400, an IBM AS400 mid-range size to run the facility here. And I did any of the programming that we did customized locally. And we had one computer operator that worked in that room. She was responsible for all the backups. That's really all it was, the petty cash box, but that was the first duty of the day, to open the safe.
I feel like probably the last one to work here. Randall Thompson was supervisor at the time. The plant had been closed. The heat in the office was out, and the office people were still working. And he called me and said they got no heat.
All right.
Come look at it. I went up on the roof and fixed it, and just a while. Fixed it, and he told me then, he said, there's almost no money left. The old surface grinder that was up at the shop,
right,
the machinist didn't use it. I used it. I was working popcorn earlier, and he asked me about that, and I said, yeah, that's okay. So I took it home. That was my compensation for coming out, which the sale value wouldn't have been hardly nothing.
Right.
Because it wore out, but anyway, that is a story, but that's before the closure. Getting sent to popcorn, that was a biggie. Phillip, my supervisor at that time, he sent me up there in his full-time job working on the 5 machines that made the handles to go in the stove top popcorn. Wow. That's the story in itself, but Phillip knew everything about this place and he was explaining to me a lot of the operations, the sequence that it was happening in, and there was a lot of scrap drops that wasn't welded. And after a little while, the big roll-around cars, I don't know how many went out a day, but I got it down to the bottom one and covered at one time. It didn't stay. It depended on the wire. If you had the good wire that would weld good, easy, whatever, and also the settings on the machine, both between the two.
Not a great deal number of stories. I've only worked here 3 years, but the funny part was that on the first day that I worked here, what I was down here for, the person who had been their IT person was leaving that day. Their last day on the job, my first day on the job. So I had to come in and spend the day with her to learn everything she knew about this place, okay? So we got through the day okay, I went home. Well, that was the weekend in 2000 that it snowed 3 feet deep. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, most of what I did was quality on the pinto beans and stuff downstairs.
Oh, yeah.
We had to weigh them, full cans. We had to make sure the weight was right, and then we drained them. And we took the pork out of them, and then we weighed the beans, weighed the pork, and come up with a total volume of how much soup was in it and everything. This was a long, drawn-out thing. And then when our apples come in, I had to do like the bricks test, the sugar test on them. And we did the test on the greens, turnip greens, collard greens. And then when we did USDA products, we had chicken and dumplings. Had to weigh that. It had to be separated. The pieces of chicken, the dumplings, and the sauce all had to be weighed.
Sounds interesting.
It was interesting. I did whole lot of weighing, and when the apple loads come in, I check the bricks on it. When the greens come in, I check the aphids test to see how many bugs we had. If there was too many, we had to do another test. It still was a high count, like 25 or over aphids. We had to reject flow. So it went to the cow pasture and was pasteurized.
I was doing carpenter work, me and my brothers, building houses, and the maintenance foreman came down to my house and said, "Would you like to have a job at Lucks on maintenance?" I said, "I sure would." So I just worked 2 weeks' notice for my brothers and came up here. And he told me I might have to work on Sundays once in a while. But in the 23 years I was here, I had to work 2 or 3 Sundays.
Wow.
It was great. It was a good place to work. I remember when I first came here, they paid every week, you know. And after in carpentry, we might get paid one time, probably 3 weeks before we get paid again. You
right.
know? And I said it was good to get a payday every week.
Yep.
When he joined in 1984, he worked part-time. Then, when he graduated, he used to work here for summertime. And he worked it for Jiffy for a little while. Then he changed. Then he worked for Pinto Beans, then come back and labor cans. Then Jiffy Pop and mix oil. And then he started labeling cans. Then he joined. Then he quit in 2001.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
What
you.
did you do?
I was night watch, third shift. I'll tell y'all the damn truth. I've never told you, Junior, I don't believe. But the girl down here in the office died. Anyway, she was at the funeral home. And her office downstairs, in the bean department. I was sitting there, and this woman, she was walking, she went down just like that. And it was the woman that was laying in the funeral home, come by like that. I figured she was making her last round. And it went on, this second shift night watchman, he told about going and seeing her when she was dead. He mentioned what kind of dress she had on, and that was a damn dress I seen, believe it or not.
Wow.
And one of the saddest notes, it was terrible. Only when the plant closed, we had to go somewhere else, did we know what we'd lost. And most time that's the thing about it, you realize what you lost when it's gone. But I want to lift up the name Calvin Davis. Calvin died in a workplace accident here. It affected us all, but they say if your name's spoken, you're not forgotten.
1984, worked till 2000 and left till 2015. I come back, tried to get the sweet potato deal going, but it didn't work out.
Yeah.
You know, about the last 3 years that they were open. I remember them. We cooked, I think it was Spider-Man pasta and those things, and I think some Sloppy Joe mix, and I can't remember what and all we cooked in them. Seamer. And so I was out there about a week, just some basic stuff, you know, and they give us this. It was Angela's Seaman Company. And so that's actually, I think they laser cut it, and it's the side view of a seam of a can.
But this was the bean wash station, and they would bring the beans in over there and just dump them in, and it would go up a vibrator, and they would get washed, and they'd have magnets there to pull any metal and stuff out. And then from there, it would go into, the the main kitchen, which was here, and they had 7 big kettles. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep, 7 big kettles right along there. And then they would cook the beans part of the way. And I watched the guys, because I didn't cook. I didn't cook. But I watched the guys, and they'd take their paddles, and when they would pinch it would be soft. That's how they would know that it would be soft enough to go into the cans. They'd put them in the cans, and then they'd finish cooking in the retort cookers up here. They would go through that track, go over to the other side, and cook in the retort cookers.
Right.
And then from there, they'd come out, and then they'd roll down the hill, and they'd put labels on them down in the bottom part. That was part of the cooling, was when it would roll outside and downhill, it would cool them off enough to where the labels would stick to the cans.
Huh.
You had a cook that stirred them, then the piping run by the bottom to pull the juice out, and then you open the drain to get the last little bit. But they were, I think, 12 and 12. But anyway, those kettles, they were 18 people to run that one kitchen, and it got down to 6, like 1973.
Who drew this?
Gary Anderson. He was the QC guy, and he and I went to Newport to start the Lucks line, and he drew that while we were working in Newport for me.
Grew up in Lucks. My daddy drove for 40 years. He was a driver. When he retired, I was able to take his place. I drove for 2 years. I got a truck. I actually have two Lucks trucks, a 66 model. And then I got this 88 Peterbilt that my daddy drove. I got pictures of him in it. And it was a switcher truck. And when he retired, I drove his truck. And I found this truck a couple years ago, and gonna keep it and paint it back up Lucks and do it in honor of all the drivers.
I was the youngest person here, yeah. I was 19 when I started in 95 and stayed till we closed.
All right. Any fond memories? Huh?
Yeah, it was a good time, man. Wish it was still going on. Should be still working here.
And Alfred Spencer, as Jack said, and Clay Preston, who would have ever thought when they started out with that dream that it would turn into a big company and be so successful. And we employed so many people in this community, and it was such a happy place to work. And it was like a big family, and everybody knew each other, and a lot of the employees were related to each other, especially the Auman family. You know, the daddies drove the trucks, and the wives worked in the plant. And
Martha here was my second grade teacher. I don't mind telling you that. Not saying she's old, but we were in a small town. Larry Hancock, his mama had 4-H. We have ties here. And so it was not a problem. I was working for Clinton on the farm, pulling corn by hand, driving an old blue truck with side planks. Ivy was right across the street from the service station. So it was a give me. I come to work at Lucks because it was family then. And every kid in Seargrove that wanted a job in the summer ended up working at Lucks. You had 3 choices. Jack come along, started plastic. There was a lumber plant in Lucks. So we grew up together, and this plant helped put a lot of kids through college. Because if their parents worked here, their grandparents, you had a job in the summer. Or when the semester ended for Christmas, most kids didn't want to work, but mom and dad had them a job lined up. They had no choice to come to work here. So it was a great place to work, and it was family. Therese Auman was over inventory, and Therese, we had 8-ounce cans of Brunswick stew, and in the warehouse, we would take a can and tape it to the back of the radiator on the forklift. And by lunchtime that night, it was boiling. It was very easy. So the inventory says there's 93 cases. So Therese is up there looking around, counting. He normally come up with 78, and he's beating himself up trying to find them. I finally said to Therese, we have 8 of them. You'll never find them again. So they had to adjust the books. Now, this is a can Nikki labeled as the last run. And that's the can that the shift was running. And Gary wrote a note, and basically it says, Darrel, I want you to have the last can made. I think it should remain in Seargrove. I can attest that this is the real last can. I made a mental note of the angle of the printer on the lid, and I'm not sure Richard Saunders or where Harold Brewer was the lead person, pardon me. But Dean, if you can see this, it says last can, and it has the date. So there's the last can from Lucks Incorporated. And there's the note that goes with it, and Gary Anderson, Darius will tell you, was the QC manager or however.
Potatoes and onions especially. You can smell it. I couldn't hang clothes out on the line. But it's amazing the stories and the good times that we did have. But I just want to tell everybody I miss y'all.